You look lonely.
Thank you so much.
The billionaire who always dined alone until the janitor said 3 words that changed everything. Before we start the story, leave in the comments what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story, everyone. The satisfaction on Camille Rhodes's face was almost excessive. She stood at the head of the conference table, the screen behind her displaying charts Derek Hale had never seen before, and 23 directors looking at him like he was a student waiting for the teacher's final scolding. The numbers don't lie, gentlemen. Her voice cut through the silence. Derek Hale neglected fundamental contracts, ignored audit warnings, and put all of Hale Ventures at risk. Derek felt his stomach sink. Not because it was true, but because it seemed true. And he knew, better than anyone, that in the business world, appearance was judgment. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but the words died before they were born. The faces around the table had already decided. He knew that look. He'd seen it his whole life, in orphanages, in schools, in families who realized he didn't fit in and moved on. The kid who always seemed to be left out. 35 years old, billionaire, owner of an empire, and still the lonely boy waiting to be rejected. That's when the door exploded. Not literally, but the bang was so loud that everyone turned. A woman in a blue uniform stumbled in, dragged by a brown leather bag the size of a travel suitcase that had gotten caught on the door handle. Oh, for heavens! She pulled. The bag wouldn't come loose. She pulled again. Grace, stop being dramatic. We're in public. The entire room froze. The woman finally freed the bag with a jerk that nearly knocked her down, adjusted the messy bun that was falling apart, looked up, and met 23 suited executives staring at her like an alien had just landed in the room. Oh, she blinked. This isn't the break room. Camille crossed her arms. Security. Wait. The janitor raised her hand. Her gaze had crossed the room and stopped on Derek, on his hunched shoulders, his clenched jaw, the eyes of someone who had given up fighting. Wait a second. She crossed the room. The security guards hesitated. The directors murmured. Camille was so shocked, she forgot to look superior. The janitor stopped in front of Derek and said 3 words no one expected. You are not alone. The silence that followed was so complete you could hear the clock on the wall. Derek looked at her. That woman in a blue uniform, giant bag, crooked bun, looking at him like she saw something no one else did. Who? His voice failed. Who are you? She smiled. A crooked smile, somewhat awkward, completely out of place in that room full of important people. Tessa Bloom, night cleaning. She pointed to the bag. And that's Grace. She's dramatic, but has a good heart. And before anyone could react, she left. The door closed. The room stayed silent for 3 more seconds, and then Camille started laughing. Well, that was pathetic. Can we continue? But Derek was no longer listening. You are not alone. When was the last time someone had said that to him? 12 hours earlier. The lobby clock at Hale Ventures showed 5:47 a.m. when Tessa Bloom passed through the turnstile, dragging Grace over her shoulder and balancing a coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. You're heavy today. She looked at the bag. What do you have in there? Bricks? A body? Tell me, Grace. I won't judge. The bag obviously didn't answer, but Tessa swore it got heavier when it was in a bad mood. Tessa! Maggie waved from the service counter, already in uniform and with that smile that only someone who's worked nights for 30 years can maintain. You're late, honey. 3 minutes, Mag. The subway. I know. The subway, traffic, the apocalypse. Maggie pushed a clipboard toward her. 42 is yours today. Tessa froze. The executive floor? The executive floor. Mag, you know that floor gives me the creeps. Everyone up there looks like they swallowed a broomstick and asked for seconds. Except the boss. Hale? Tessa snorted. He doesn't even look at us. He's like a ghost in an expensive suit. He doesn't look at anyone, honey. Maggie shrugged. It's different. It's sad. That's what it is. Tessa took the clipboard, adjusted Grace on her shoulder. The strap got caught on the locker and she almost fell, cursed under her breath, and headed to the elevator. The 42nd floor greeted her with that abandoned library silence that only corporate buildings have at dawn. Automatic lights turning on as she passed, as if the building itself was slowly waking up. She pushed the cleaning cart down the marble hallway, passing empty meeting rooms and dark offices, until she reached the biggest one of all, the CEO's office. And through the glass wall, she saw him. Derek Hale, alone, sitting at a table too big for just one person, eating something from a styrofoam container while staring at his computer screen. At 6 in the morning, Tessa stopped the cart. This wasn't the first time she'd seen him there at that hour. Actually, in recent weeks, she'd seen him more times than she could count. Always alone. Always with that posture of someone carrying too much weight on his shoulders. "That's sad," she murmured to Grace. "Look at him. A billionaire eating dinner like a college student the night before an exam. She should walk right past." That was protocol. Don't bother the executives. Don't make eye contact. Be invisible. Tessa Bloom had been invisible her whole life. And maybe because of that, maybe exactly because of that, she knocked on the glass. Derek looked up, surprised. She pointed at the food, then at him, and made the universal gesture for, "This is depressing." He frowned. She opened the door. "Excuse me, Mr. Hale. I don't want to bother you." A lie. She did want to. But it's not healthy to have dinner with just the walls. Derek blinked. "It's breakfast. 6 in the morning after spending the night here, that's late dinner." She crossed her arms. "My grandmother used to say that eating alone makes sadness fatter and souls skinnier." He was quiet for a moment. Tessa waited for him to send her away. "That's what everyone did. Thanks for your concern. You can go. Or worse, who are you to talk to me like that?" But Derek Hale didn't say either of those things. He said, "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." She was. Tessa felt her chest tighten, but didn't let it show. She also used to say that a heavy purse is a sign of a full life. But I think she just wanted to justify the mess. Derek looked at Grace. "Is that a purse or a camping backpack?" "That's Grace." Tessa adjusted the strap lovingly. "Family heirloom. She's sensitive, so be careful what you say." And then it happened. Derek Hale, the ghost in an expensive suit, the billionaire who didn't look at anyone, almost smiled. It didn't become a complete smile. It was more like a tremor at the corner of his mouth, a ghost of something he had forgotten how to do. But it was there. Tessa saw it and kept it. "Well," she stepped back toward the door. "Good late dinner, Mr. Hale. Try not to choke on the loneliness." She left before he could respond. The door closed, and Derek stared at the empty space where she had been for longer than he'd like to admit. It's not healthy to have dinner with just the walls. He looked around. The enormous office. The view of all of New York. The table that could seat 20 people and only had him. When was the last time someone had cared if he was eating alone? He couldn't remember. In the hallway, Tessa leaned against the wall and let out the breath she didn't know she was holding. "Grace," she whispered to the purse, "I just lectured a billionaire about eating habits. Who do I think I am?" The purse didn't answer. "You're right. I'm being foolish." She straightened the cart and went back to work. But she couldn't get his almost smile out of her head, that tiny tremor that seemed to have cost so much to appear. He looked so tired, she thought. So alone. Tessa knew loneliness, knew it too well, and she recognized it in others like someone recognizing a scar just like their own. She shook her head. "Stop it, Tessa. He's a billionaire. You're a cleaner. Go back to your world." But while cleaning the empty rooms on the 40th floor, she couldn't stop thinking about that man eating alone at 6 in the morning. And how sometimes the people most surrounded by others are the loneliest of all. 11:47 at night. 12 hours later. Tessa was in the cleaning supply room when Maggie appeared in the doorway, out of breath. "Tessa, you need to see this." "What?" "The boss. Hale, he's having an emergency meeting on the 40th floor. They say they're going to remove him from leadership." Tessa felt something tighten in her chest. "Remove him? How?" "I don't know, but that Camille Rhodes woman is running it, and from what I heard," Maggie lowered her voice, "it doesn't look good." Tessa didn't think. She grabbed Grace, left the supply room, and ran to the elevator. "Why are you doing this?" a voice in her head asked. "He doesn't even know your name." But another voice, one that sounded a lot like her grandmother, answered, "Because nobody deserves to fall alone." The elevator opened on the 40th floor. Tessa ran down the hallway, found the conference room door, tried to open it. Grace got caught on the door handle. "Not now, Grace, for the love of—" She pulled. The purse wouldn't let go. She pulled harder. The door opened with a crash, and 23 executives turned to look at the cleaning lady who had just crashed the most important meeting of the year. Tessa looked at Derek, at his hunched shoulders, at the look of someone who had already given up. And she knew, with a certainty she couldn't explain, that she needed to do something. She walked across the room, stopped in front of him, and said the only words that mattered. "You're not alone." Tessa Bloom couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned in bed for 4 hours, staring at the ceiling of her tiny Brooklyn apartment, reliving every second of that meeting. The door bursting open, the 23 pairs of eyes, Derek Hale's face when she said those 3 words, "You're not alone." Who did she think she was? "Grace," she mumbled to the purse hanging on the chair next to her bed. "I need therapy, or a filter between my brain and my mouth, maybe both." The purse, as always, didn't answer. But Tessa swore it was judging her. At 4 in the afternoon, she gave up pretending she was going to rest. She took a shower, put on her blue uniform, and dragged Grace to the subway 2 hours earlier than necessary. If she was going to make a fool of herself, at least she'd arrive early. The lobby of Hale Ventures was different when she walked in. Not physically. The same marble floors, the same cold lights, the same corporate cathedral silence. But there was something in the air. A tension she could feel on her skin. Employees walked through the hallways in groups of 2 or 3, whispering. Nervous glances to the sides. Conversations that disappeared when someone approached. Tessa stopped at the service counter and found Maggie already in uniform, with that expression of someone who knows more than she should. "You're early, honey? I couldn't sleep? Guilt weighing on you?" Tessa narrowed her eyes. "What do you know?" Maggie shrugged, but her smile said everything. "The whole building is talking about the cleaning lady who crashed the board meeting and told the CEO he wasn't alone." She tilted her head. "That was you, wasn't it?" Tessa felt her face get hot. The purse got stuck in the door. "Uh-huh. It was an accident." "Uh-huh." "Maggie." The older woman laughed and pushed the clipboard toward her. 42 again. "Seems like the universe wants you two on the same floor." The universe has a pretty cruel sense of humor. Tessa grabbed the clipboard, adjusted Grace on her shoulder. The strap got tangled in the locker, as always, and she almost went down, and headed to the elevator grumbling about fate, coincidences, and purses that sabotaged their own owners. The 42nd floor welcomed her with the same silence as always. But this time, Tessa really paid attention. In the past few weeks, she had walked through that hallway hundreds of times without noticing anything beyond dust and full trash cans. Now, however, every detail was screaming. The executive director's office door was closed, but you could see a light on underneath. Muffled voices coming from a conference room that should have been empty, and 2 employees who walked past her without even looking, their faces tense, speaking in code. "The documents are ready." "Derek won't be able to defend himself." Tessa froze. The 2 turned the corner and disappeared. She stood there in the middle of the polished marble, the cleaning cart forgotten beside her, her heart beating a little faster than it should. "Grace," she whispered, "did you hear that?" The purse swayed slightly on her shoulder. Tessa looked around. Nobody. The hallway was empty. She reached into her purse looking for her little notepad. First, she pulled out a package of expired crackers. Then a pink stapler she didn't even remember having. Then a travel toothbrush still in its plastic. "You're a mess, Grace. Seriously." Finally, she found the notepad, tiny the size of a Post-it with a worn cover. She wrote in small handwriting, "Employees tense, whispers about documents, Derek in trouble." She looked at the words for a second, then shook her head. "You're imagining things, Tessa. Stop it." She put the notepad away and went back to pushing the cart. She had work to do, floors to clean, trash cans to empty, and a billionaire to avoid for the rest of the night. The plan worked for exactly 47 minutes. Tessa was finishing cleaning the last room in the hallway when she saw, through the glass wall, a light on in the CEO's office. Derek Hale, sitting at the same desk, in the same position, eating from the same styrofoam container, alone. Again, she stopped the cart, looked at her purse. "No, Grace, no. We're not going there again." Grace remained silent. "I know what you're thinking, and the answer is no." The purse didn't move. "He's a billionaire. I'm a cleaning lady. It's not my business if he eats alone." Silence. Stop judging me. Tessa took a deep breath, let it out, grabbed the cart and started walking in the opposite direction. She took 3 steps, stopped. Fine, fine, but if I get fired, it's your fault. She turned around and went to the office door. Knocked once, twice. Derek's voice came muffled. Come in. She pushed the door open and found him exactly like last time, except this time his shoulders seemed more hunched, his eyes more tired, the plate of food barely touched. Twice in 2 days, Mr. Hale. She crossed her arms. This is becoming a pattern. Derek lifted his head. For a second, Tessa saw surprise on his face. Then something else. Something that looked almost relief. You again. Me again. The inconvenient cleaning lady who doesn't know how to keep quiet. I noticed. She waited for him to send her away. Ask her to leave. Call security. Anything. But Derek just sighed and pushed the phone container aside. What do you want? Nothing. Just came to ask if you know that restaurants exist. Places with tables, chairs, other people. Ever heard of them? I have. And why don't you go? Because... He stopped, looked at her like he was deciding if it was worth answering. Because I got used to it. Tessa felt something tighten in her chest. She knew that phrase, had said it herself hundreds of times after her grandmother passed away. I got used to being alone. I got used to the silence. I got used to it. Lies we tell ourselves to hurt less. My grandmother used to say that loneliness is a choice until it becomes a prison. Tessa took a step into the office. Mr. Hale, with all due respect, you didn't get used to it. Nobody gets used to it. We just pretend we do. Derek was silent. The kind of silence that fills an entire room. Tessa realized she had gone too far. She always went too far. Her mouth worked before her brain, and by the time she realized it, she had already said things she shouldn't have. Sorry. She backed toward the door. It's none of my business. You're right. She stopped. Derek was looking at her with an expression she couldn't figure out. Vulnerability? Anger? Both? I got used to it because it was easier than admitting that. He didn't finish the sentence, ran his hand over his face. Forget it. It doesn't matter. It does matter. You don't know me. I don't need to know you to see. Tessa pointed to the phone container. That right there tells a whole story, Mr. Hale. Cold food, empty office, 11 at night. I may be just a cleaning lady, but cleaning ladies see everything. Derek kept looking at her for a long moment, and then it happened again, the almost smile. That twitch at the corner of his mouth that seemed to cost enormous effort. A ghost of something he had forgotten how to do. He shook his head. You're different. Different how? Different like someone who doesn't pretend. Tessa felt her face warm. Pretending is too much work. I prefer being inconvenient for free. This time, the almost smile lasted a second longer. She backed toward the door, her heart beating strangely in her chest. Well, I have floors to clean, and you have. She looked at the cold food. Dinner to finish. Try not to choke on the loneliness. She turned to leave. And the cleaning bucket, which she had forgotten beside the door, met her foot at exactly the right moment. The noise was spectacular. Dirty water, soap, cleaning rags, everything flew across the pristine marble of the CEO's office in a cinematic cascade of disaster. Tessa stood in the middle of the puddle, eyes wide, mouth open. Ground, she whispered to herself. When I ask you to swallow me up, will you do it? Derek was standing now, looking at the chaos on his office floor. And then he did something Tessa didn't expect. He laughed. Not a big laugh, more like a puff of air. A surprised sound that escaped before he could contain it. But it was there. Real. You. He shook his head. You're a walking disaster. Thank you. I practice. Tessa spent the next 15 minutes cleaning the billionaire's office floor while he watched from his chair, holding on to the almost smile like it was a precious secret. When she finally finished, she was sweaty, disheveled, and her uniform was stained with dirty water. Done. She straightened the cart. Sorry for the everything. Don't apologize. Derek looked at her in a strange way. It's been a long time since anyone made me laugh. Tessa didn't know what to say, so she did what she always did when she didn't know what to say. She left. The door closed behind her. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and let out her breath. Nobody gets used to it. We just pretend we do. She thought about the look in his eyes when she said that, the way his shoulders dropped, the laugh that had escaped against his will. Derek Hale was a billionaire, owner of an empire, surrounded by people 24 hours a day. And he was the loneliest person Tessa had ever met. She grabbed the cart and went back to work. But she couldn't get his words out of her head. It's been a long time since anyone made me laugh. How many years had it been? And why did it matter so much to her? Inside the office, Derek stared at the closed door longer than he would care to admit. Nobody gets used to it. We just pretend we do. He stored those words away like someone keeping a key they don't yet know which door it opens. And for the first time in a long while, the cold food didn't seem so lonely. In the dark hallway of the 40th floor, a door opened. Camille Rhodes stepped out of the conference room, phone to her ear, sharp smile in place. "Everything's ready," she said quietly. "Derek Hale won't know what hit him." She walked past the janitor in the blue uniform without even looking. As if she were invisible. But Tessa heard, and this time she took notes. Camille Rhodes had a smile that could cut glass. She knew it, cultivated it, spent hours in front of the mirror practicing the exact curve of her lips that said, "I'm being nice," while her eyes screamed, "I'm going to destroy your arguments." That morning, sitting at the head of the conference table on the 39th floor, she used that smile like a weapon. "Derek." Her voice was honey poured over razor blades. "You look tired. Did you sleep well?" Derek Hale sat across the table, surrounded by 6 department directors. He had deep circles under his eyes, his tie slightly crooked, and that look of someone who hadn't slept right in weeks. "I slept enough?" "Puh." Camille flipped through the papers in front of her with the calm of a snake waiting for the right moment to strike. "It's just that the last quarter's reports show some inconsistencies. Nothing serious, of course, but the board is concerned." The other directors exchanged glances. Derek felt his stomach tighten. What inconsistencies? Oh, details. Numbers that don't add up. Contracts that seem to have been neglected. She looked up from the papers. The smile widened. "I'm sure you can explain." Derek said nothing, because he didn't know what she was talking about. And that was the problem. The meeting lasted another 2 hours. Each of Camille's questions was a precise needle, calculated to make Derek look incompetent without ever directly accusing him. The other directors left confused, murmuring among themselves. Derek left feeling like he'd been hit by a train he never saw coming. In the hallway, he stopped in front of the window. New York stretched out below, the empire he had built from nothing, alone, brick by brick, night after night, and now someone was trying to take it all away from him. He touched his jacket pocket out of habit, empty. But for some reason, he thought of the janitor, of her voice saying that nobody gets used to loneliness. "You're not alone, sir." A lie. He had always been alone. He was alone now, and he probably always would be. Camille stayed behind in the conference room, organizing her papers with the calm of someone who had just won a chess match. The door opened. Preston Clark entered, looking around like a frightened rat. "Camille?" His voice was a nervous whisper. Are you sure about this?" She didn't turn around. "About what, Preston?" "All of this. The documents, the reports. If someone finds out they were altered, nobody will find out." Now she turned. The smile was gone, replaced by something colder. "Did you do what I asked?" Preston swallowed hard. "The files are ready, the recordings too. But Camille, this could go very wrong." "It only goes wrong if you're incompetent." She moved closer to him. Preston was taller, but somehow Camille seemed to take up all the space. "And you're not incompetent, are you, Preston?" "No, good." She patted his shoulder in what seemed more like a warning than an affectionate gesture. "When I take over this company, you'll be my right hand, Vice President of Technology, office with a view. Everything you've always wanted." Preston's eyes gleamed with a mixture of ambition and fear. "You promise?" "I always keep my promises, Preston." The smile returned. "And my warnings too. Remember that." She grabbed her purse and left the room, her heels echoing on the marble like the countdown of an ultimatum. Preston stood in the middle of the empty room, sweating. He didn't see the shadow that moved in the hallway outside. Didn't hear the silent footsteps moving away. And he definitely didn't notice the janitor in the blue uniform who was cleaning the room next door, with the door slightly open. Tessa Bloom leaned against the back of the chair, her heart beating so loud she was sure the entire building could hear it. She hadn't planned to listen. She was cleaning the secondary conference room, wiping down the tables, when the voices started leaking through the wall. At first, they were just fragments, random words that didn't make sense. The documents are ready. When I take over this company, Derek won't be able to defend himself. But then she understood. She understood that Camille Rhodes wasn't just asking tough questions. She was setting a trap, making up evidence, building a lie so elaborate it would seem true, and Derek Hale was the target. Tessa looked at her Grace purse hanging on the chair beside her. "Grace," she whispered, "I just overheard a corporate sabotage plan. What do I do?" The purse remained silent. "You're right. Nobody would believe me. I'm just a cleaning lady." She stuck her hand in the purse looking for her notepad. She pulled out a wooden spoon first. How did that get in there? Then a glittery hair tie. Then a gossip magazine from 2019. "You're a portal to another dimension, Grace. That's the only explanation." Finally, she found the notepad. Tiny, worn out, perfect for writing down corporate secrets. In the smallest handwriting she could manage, she wrote, "Camille plus Preston. Documents altered. Audio fabricated. Want to bring down Derek. Strange meeting." She looked at the words. They seemed so small, so insignificant. Who would believe that a cleaning lady had uncovered a corporate conspiracy just because she was cleaning the wrong room at the right time? "Nobody," she murmured. "The answer is nobody." She put the notepad at the bottom of her purse and went back to cleaning. She had work to do, floors to mop, trash cans to empty, and a conspiracy to pretend she hadn't heard. The problem was that Tessa Bloom was never good at pretending. She finished the room and pushed the cart into the hallway. She was almost at the elevator when a voice made her freeze. "You there?" Tessa turned around slowly. Camille Rhodes was standing in the middle of the hallway, arms crossed, sharp smile in place. "Do I know you?" Tessa felt her stomach sink. "No, ma'am. I'm from the cleaning crew." "Huh." Camille examined her from head to toe like someone evaluating a bug. "You were at that meeting yesterday, the one who barged into the boardroom." "It was an accident. My purse got stuck on the—" "I don't care." Camille stepped forward and Tessa felt the air freeze around her. "You know what happens to employees who show up where they shouldn't, miss?" "Bloom. Tessa Bloom." "Bloom." Camille savored the name as if it were poison. "Flowers wilt, Miss Bloom, especially the ones that grow where they weren't planted." The smile widened. "Get back to your work and try not to stumble into any more important meetings." She walked past Tessa as if she didn't exist, her heels echoing through the hallway until they disappeared around the corner. Tessa let out the breath she didn't know she was holding. "Grace," she whispered to her purse, "that woman makes me nervous, and I grew up in Brooklyn." She hurried toward the elevator, but something made her stop before pressing the button. The notepad. It was lying on the floor, right where Camille had walked by. Tessa felt her blood freeze. She bent down, picked up the notepad with trembling hands, and checked the pages. The note was still there, intact. Camille hadn't seen it. "Close call," she murmured. "Very close call." She stuffed the notepad in her uniform pocket this time, safer than the bottomless purse, and got on the elevator. The doors closed, and Tessa stared at her own reflection in the polished metal, thinking about everything she had heard. Camille was planning to destroy Derek, with false evidence, with well-constructed lies, with the kind of manipulation that a cleaning lady could never expose, or could she? "No, Tessa." She shook her head. "You're not getting involved in this. It's none of your business. Derek Hale is a billionaire. He can defend himself." But her grandmother's voice echoed in her head, as it always did at the most inconvenient moments. When we see injustice and pretend we didn't see it, we become part of it. Tessa closed her eyes. "Honestly, Grandma, why are you always right?" The elevator stopped on the ground floor. The doors opened, and Tessa walked out carrying a secret that weighed more than Grace's purse on a bad day. On the 39th floor, Camille Rhodes looked out the window of her office, New York sparkling at her feet like a kingdom about to be conquered. The plan was working. Derek was vulnerable. The board was having doubts. And on Friday, she would present the evidence that would finish him off for good. She smiled at her own reflection in the glass. "Nobody sees what they don't want to see," she murmured, but someone had seen, and was taking notes. The rooftop of Hale Ventures had the best view of New York that Tessa had ever seen. Not that she had seen many. Cleaning ladies don't usually get invited to the floors with a view. But this past week she had discovered that the 40th floor terrace stayed unlocked after 10 at night, and that nobody went up there at that hour. It was the perfect place to breathe and to talk to a purse. "Grace, I need some advice." Tessa was sitting in one of the iron chairs, her feet propped up on the railing, looking at the city lights. "I heard something I shouldn't have, and now I can't stop thinking about it." The purse remained silent. "You're right. I should forget it. It's not my problem if Camille wants to destroy Derek. He's a billionaire. He must have an army of lawyers." Silence. "But what if he doesn't? What if he doesn't know what's happening? What if—" "Running away from the walls, Miss Bloom." Tessa almost fell off the chair. Derek Hale was standing in the terrace doorway, hands in his pockets, an expression that mixed surprise with something that seemed almost relief. "Mr. Hale." She got up so fast that the purse slipped from her lap and hit the floor with a dull thud. I was just— The terrace was open and— "Easy," he raised his hand. "I'm not going to fire you for getting some fresh air." Tessa blinked. "You're not?" "No." He stepped outside, looking at the view. "Actually, I came here for the same reason. Running away from the walls?" "Something like that." He walked over to the railing, stopping a few feet from her. Up close, Tessa noticed he looked even more tired than last time. Slumped shoulders, tense jaw, the eyes of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. "Are you okay?" Derek let out a dry laugh. "Everyone asks me that. Nobody wants to hear the real answer." "I do." He turned his head to look at her. Tessa held his gaze. "Why?" His voice had a note of suspicion. "What do you get out of it?" "Nothing. It's not about getting anything. It's about—" She thought of her grandmother. The afternoons in the small apartment, having tea while her grandmother told stories. The feeling of being truly seen by someone. "It's about not pretending I don't care when I do care." Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to the view and said, almost in a whisper, "No, I'm not okay." Tessa said nothing. She just waited. "There are things happening at the company that I don't understand. People I thought I trusted looking at me differently. Meetings where I feel like a stranger in my own building." He ran his hand over his face. "I built all this from scratch. Every brick, every contract, and now it feels like it's slipping through my fingers." Tessa thought about what she had heard. The conversation between Camille and Preston. The fabricated documents. The evidence they were building against him. She should tell him. Open her mouth and say everything. But who would believe a cleaning lady? She had no proof, just fragments of a conversation she might have misunderstood. If she told him now, without evidence, it might seem crazy. Or worse, it might alert Camille that someone was suspicious. So she did the only thing she could do. She stayed there. "My grandmother lost everything once," Tessa said, breaking the silence. "The house, the job, even her husband. Not to her husband, she lost him. But anyway." She gave a crooked smile. "You know what she used to say?" "What?" "That the things we truly build aren't made of brick. They're the ones that remain when the brick falls." Tessa looked at him. "You built a building, but you also built this." She pointed to the city. "A company that employs thousands of people. Projects that change lives. I know because Maggie tells me. She's worked here for 20 years. She's seen everything. And she says you're different from other bosses." Derek frowned. "Different how?" "Different like someone who cares, even when you pretend you don't." He fell silent. The city glowed below them, sirens in the distance, car horns, the heart of New York beating as it always beat, indifferent to the dramas of the mortals who lived in it. "Why do you care?" Derek's voice was almost a whisper. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why do you care if I'm okay or not?" Tessa thought about the question. The honest answer was that she didn't know. It didn't make sense to care about a billionaire who probably didn't even remember her name. It didn't make sense to lose sleep thinking about corporate conspiracies that weren't her problem. It didn't make sense to feel her chest tighten every time she saw him eating alone in that huge office. But the truth was simple. "Because I know how it is," she said. "Being invisible. Being what's left after everyone else has gone." She looked at the city lights. "My grandmother was the only person who really saw me in life. When she passed away, I spent 2 years feeling like a ghost. Going through the motions, doing things, but with no one who really saw me." She turned to him. "You have 1,000 people working for you, journalists wanting interviews, investors wanting meetings, but when I look in your eyes, you know what I see?" Derek didn't answer. The same thing I used to see in the mirror 2 years ago. Someone surrounded by people, but completely alone. The silence that followed was the longest in Tessa's life. She had gone too far, again. Her mouth working before her brain, as always. Now he was going to send her away, or worse, he was going to look at her with pity and, "You scare me." Tessa blinked. "What?" "You." Derek was looking at her strangely. "You see me too much, and that's scary." "Sorry, Don't apologize." He took a step toward her. "It's been a long time since someone really looked at me. Most people just see the position, the money, what they can get from me." He stopped. "You see? The rest." Tessa felt her face get warm. "The rest is more interesting." "Is it?" "Yes, because the rest is human." They stood in silence, looking at each other in the middle of the terrace, the entire city at their feet. And then, Tessa did what she always did when the moment got too intense. She broke the mood. "Okay, this is getting too deep for a Tuesday conversation." She bent down to pick up Grace's bag from the floor. "I need to get back to work before Maggie sends the cavalry after me." She opened the bag looking for something, anything, an excuse for her shaking hands. She pulled out a wooden spoon, then a camping flashlight, then a packet of cafeteria sugar. "Aha!" She held up the sugar packet like it was a trophy. "This," Derek frowned. "What is that?" "Sugar." She held out the packet to him. "A charm. A charm. To sweeten these bitter days." She shrugged. "My grandmother used to do this. She'd give people small things when they needed luck. She said it wasn't the object that mattered, it was the intention." Derek looked at the sugar packet like it was the most confusing object he'd ever held. "You're giving me a packet of sugar?" "I am. As a charm." "Exactly. Why?" Tessa smiled. "Because you look like you need it." She got up to leave, but the bag's strap caught on the terrace railing. She pulled. The bag didn't come loose. She pulled again, harder. The bag came loose with a jolt, and Tessa was thrown backward, almost falling on her bottom. Derek reached out instinctively and caught her arm. For a second, they stayed like that, his hand on her arm, their faces inches apart, their eyes locked on each other. Tessa's heart raced. "Thank you," she whispered, for the arm. I mean, for catching me, you know." "Very articulate, Tessa. Congratulations." Derek released her arm slowly. "Be careful with the bag. It has a life of its own. I've given up trying to control it." She moved away toward the door, her face burning, her heart still beating too fast. At the door, she turned one last time. "Mr. Hale?" He was still standing in the same place, the sugar packet in his hand. "You're not alone, even when it feels like you are." And before he could answer, she disappeared through the door. Derek stayed on the terrace for another 20 minutes, looking at the city without really seeing it. The sugar packet was still in his hand. He should throw it away. It was ridiculous. A sugar packet as a charm? Who did that? But when he finally went downstairs, the packet went into his jacket pocket. And stayed there. For the first time in years, Derek Hale didn't feel completely alone. And that scared him more than any board meeting. 2 days later, Tessa was still thinking about the terrace. About Derek's arm holding hers. About his eyes so close. About the sugar packet she had given him, as if it were the most normal thing in the world to give charms to billionaires. "Grace," she murmured as she pushed the cleaning cart down the 39th floor hallway. "I'm an emotional mess. You know that, right?" The bag swayed on her shoulder as if agreeing. "Thanks for the support." It was almost midnight. The building was emptier than usual, even by late-night standards. Tessa had spent the last 3 hours cleaning floors without running into anyone except the night security guards. But when she turned the corner toward the operations room, she saw light and heard voices. She stopped the cart, leaned against the wall, and listened. "The audios are ready," it was Preston's voice, nervous, sweaty. "I edited the recordings like you asked. It sounds like Derek is admitting that he neglected the contracts." "Excellent." Camille, her tone was pure ice. "And the documents?" "Ready too. Dates altered, signatures copied. Nobody will be able to prove they're fake." "Great. On Friday I present everything to the board." Derek won't be able to defend himself. The no-confidence vote passes, he gets removed, and I take over as interim CEO. Tessa felt her stomach drop. It was worse than she had imagined. Much worse. It wasn't just altered documents. It was fabricated audios, planted evidence, a complete plan to destroy a man who had no idea what was coming. Camille? Preston's voice trembled. Are you sure this will work? What if someone finds out? Who's going to find out, Preston? Camille's tone was pure contempt. The directors? They're already on my side. The employees? They don't even know I exist. And Derek? She laughed. A cold laugh. Derek is so busy trying to save the company that he doesn't even notice the danger is inside it. Tessa needed to get out of there. She backed away slowly, trying not to make noise. 1 step, 2, 3. On the 4th step, she bumped into the bucket of cleaning supplies. The noise echoed through the hallway like thunder. What was that? Camille's voice cut through the silence. Tessa didn't think. She ran. She grabbed her purse, Grace, abandoned the cart, and rushed down the hallway toward the emergency stairs. Her steps echoed on the marble, her heart beating so loud she was sure the entire building could hear it. She pushed the stair door and ran down. 2 floors. 3, 4. She only stopped when she reached the cleaning storage room on the 35th floor, the safest place she could think of. She leaned against the wall, breathless, her hands shaking. Grace, she whispered, I almost got caught. I almost. She stopped. There was a sound coming from inside the purse. A low, muffled buzzing. Tessa stuck her hand in the purse. She first pulled out an old wallet she hadn't used in years. Then a bag of mint candies she didn't remember buying. Then a porcelain cat figurine that definitely wasn't hers. Where do you get these things, Grace? Seriously? Finally, she found the source of the sound. The recorder. Her grandmother's old recorder that she had kept in her purse for years as a keepsake. The same recorder she was sure didn't work anymore because the battery had died in 2019. It was on. The red light blinking. Recording. Tessa looked at the device with wide eyes. You? She looked at the purse. You did this on purpose? Grace remained silent. You turned on by yourself? How? You're a purse. Silence. Tessa pressed the stop button, then rewind, and then, with trembling hands, pressed play. Camille's voice came through the speaker, distorted by distance and the purse's fabric, but clear enough. The audios are ready. And then Preston. I edited the recordings like you asked. And Camille again. On Friday, I present everything to the board. Derek won't be able to defend himself. Tessa stopped the recorder. She stared at the device in her hands as if she couldn't believe it. Evidence. She had evidence. It wasn't perfect. The quality was poor, the voices muffled, but it was something. It was more than anyone would expect from a janitor who was just cleaning the hallway. Grace. She looked at the purse. I don't know if you're magical, if you have a life of your own, or if I'm completely crazy. But thank you. The purse, as always, didn't respond, but Tessa could swear it seemed lighter than before. She stored the recorder in the bottom of the purse, in the safest corner she could find, and sat on the cold storage room floor. Now she had a choice. She could pretend she hadn't heard anything, go back to work, clean the floors as if nothing had happened, let Derek find out on his own that he was being betrayed. Or she could do something. But do what? She spoke to the ceiling. I'm a janitor. Who's gonna believe me? Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head, as it always did in the most difficult moments. Truth doesn't need credentials, my child. It just needs courage. Easy for you to say, Grandma. Tessa looked at the ceiling. You weren't trying to save a CEO from a high-heeled snake. She thought about the rooftop conversation, about his eyes when she said he looked lonely, about the almost smile that cost so much to appear. Derek Hale was a man who had learned not to trust anyone. If she came to him with a story about conspiracies and evidence recorded in a magical purse, he would probably think she was crazy. She needed more. She needed the right moment. She needed a plan. Grace, she said to the purse, I'm going to need you on Friday. The purse remained silent. Was that a yes? Silence. I'll take that as a yes. She stood up, straightened her uniform, and left the storage room. She had work to do, floors to clean, trash cans to empty, and 4 days to figure out how to save a billionaire who didn't even know he needed saving. Easy. When Tessa returned to the 39th floor to get the abandoned cart, she found the hallway empty. Camille and Preston had left, but on the door of the operations room there was a note stuck on it. Hallway cleaned at 11:47 p.m., signed, Cleaning Crew. Tessa frowned. She hadn't left any note. Maggie, she whispered. The older woman must have seen the abandoned cart and covered for her. Left a false trail, given an excuse. Tessa felt her eyes burn. I need to thank that woman, she murmured to Grace while grabbing the cart. Buy her a gift, make a cake, something. The purse swayed on her shoulder as if agreeing. Tessa pushed the cart toward the elevator, the recorder weighing in the bottom of the purse like a promise. Friday was coming, and she was going to be ready, or at least she was going to try. On the 40th floor, Derek Hale was sitting in the dark office. The takeout food was getting cold on the desk. Reports were piling up. The computer glowed with unread emails, but he wasn't looking at any of that. He was looking at the sugar packet in his hand. To sweeten these bitter days. He put the packet in his jacket pocket and wondered why a janitor he barely knew could make him feel less alone than anyone in the past 10 years. In the empty operations room on the 39th floor, one of the computers was still on. On the screen, an open file folder. Removal project, confidential. Inside, dozens of documents, all with Derek Hale's name. All ready to get him out of the way. Tessa spent 2 days planning the perfect moment. She arrived early, stayed late. Mapped Derek's schedule like a very poorly trained secret agent. She discovered he arrived at 6 in the morning, had lunch at 2 in the afternoon, and walked through the hallway by his office around 10 at night before leaving. The plan was simple. Intercept him in the hallway, tell him what she had heard, show him the recorder, and let him decide what to do. Simple, right? Wrong. On Wednesday night, Tessa was positioned in the 40th floor hallway at 9:53, pretending to clean an artificial plant that didn't need cleaning. Grace, she whispered to the purse, I'm nervous. And when I get nervous, I talk nonsense. So if I start talking too much, give me a tug, okay? The purse remained silent. Was that a yes? Silence. I'll take that as a yes. At 10:07, Derek's office doors opened. He came out with his briefcase in hand, his jacket on his arm, the same tired expression as always. He walked past Tessa without even looking, as if she were part of the decoration. She swallowed hard, dropped the cloth, and took 2 steps toward him. Mr. Hale? He stopped, turned. For a second he seemed not to recognize her. Then his expression changed. Something softened in his eyes. Miss Bloom. He remembered her name. For some reason, that made Tessa's heart race more than it should have. I need to talk to you. She took another step. It's important. It's about the company, about things I heard. Derek frowned. Things you heard? Yes, conversations between Camille and Preston. Derek, the voice cut through the hallway like a blade. Camille Rhodes appeared at the end of the hallway, her heels echoing on the marble, her sharp smile in place. She looked from Derek to Tessa, then back to Derek. Am I interrupting something? No. Derek put his hands in his pockets. Miss Bloom was just... Oh, the janitor. Camille stepped forward, her smile widening. I remember you, the one who crashed the board meeting. Tessa felt her stomach sink. It was an accident. Of course it was. Camille turned to Derek, her voice loaded with fake concern. Derek, this employee has been worrying me. I've seen her wandering around floors that aren't hers, asking strange questions to other employees. Some colleagues mentioned that she seems too interested in company matters. Tessa felt her blood freeze. That's not true. It's not? Camille crossed her arms. Then what were you doing on the 39th floor Tuesday night? Your shift was on the 35th. How did she know that? Tessa opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. Camille turned to Derek again. I don't want to cause trouble, Derek, but a cleaning lady trying to have private conversations with the CEO in the middle of the night? It seems strange. It seems like someone wants attention. I don't want attention. Tessa stepped forward. Mr. Hale, please listen to me. Camille is what? Camille interrupted, her voice smooth as poison. Trying to protect the company? Doing my job? Being responsible. She gave a sad smile. Derek, I know you're under pressure. I know things are tough. But if every low-level employee could come here telling stories. They're not stories. Tessa felt her eyes burning. I heard you and Preston, talking about altered documents, about fabricated recordings, about... That's ridiculous. Camille didn't lose her composure for even a second. Derek, are you hearing this? She's making things up. She probably wants some kind of compensation or attention or, I have proof. The words escaped before Tessa could hold them back. Both turned to her. Camille raised an eyebrow. Proof? Tessa reached into her purse. She needed to show the recorder. She needed to make Derek listen. She pulled out a hairbrush. No. She pulled out a bag of candy. No. She pulled out a flashlight. For the love of God, Grace. The purse seemed deeper than ever, the objects multiplying as if Grace herself was sabotaging her. Camille let out a short laugh. That's your proof? A purse full of junk? No, wait, it's here somewhere, I know it. Derek. Camille touched his arm with false kindness. I think Miss Bloom needs help. Clearly she's confused, maybe too stressed. I can talk to HR about giving her a few days off. Derek said nothing. He was looking at Tessa with an expression she couldn't figure out. Confusion, doubt, and something else. Something that looked like disappointment. Mr. Hale, Tessa's voice trembled. Please, I know how this looks, but I'm not making it up. I know what I heard. He remained silent. The doubt in his eyes was like a tight knot in her chest. I just wanted to help, Tessa whispered, and then she did the only thing she could, turned around and left. Or tried to, because Grace chose exactly that moment to get stuck on the door handle of the nearest door. Tessa pulled. The purse wouldn't come loose. Not now, Grace, for the love of. She pulled harder. The strap slipped, the purse opened, and half the contents fell on the hallway floor with a noise that echoed through the entire floor. Makeup products, old papers, an overripe banana. The recorder, finally visible, but now buried under an avalanche of things Tessa didn't even know she was carrying. Camille was openly laughing now. This is pathetic. Tessa bent down to gather the things, her face burning with shame, her hands shaking. Let me help. She looked up. Derek was there. Crouched beside her, picking up a tube of toothpaste that had rolled to his feet. I don't need. I know. He handed the tube to her. But I want to help. Tessa looked into his eyes. For a second, a tiny second, she saw something beyond doubt. Something that seemed to want to believe her. But then Camille cleared her throat. Derek, don't you have an early meeting tomorrow? Shouldn't you be wasting time with this? The moment broke. Derek stood up. You're right. He looked at Tessa one last time. Miss Bloom, have a good night. And he left. Camille followed him, but not before casting one last look at Tessa, a look of pure triumph. Tessa was left alone in the hallway, surrounded by the wreckage of the purse, feeling as if the ground had been pulled out from under her feet. In the cleaning closet, 20 minutes later, Tessa cried. Not a delicate movie cry, an ugly, loud cry, the kind that makes your nose run and your eyes swell. She curled up in the corner between the buckets and brooms and let it all out. The humiliation, the frustration, the horrible feeling of not being believed. Grace, she sobbed to the purse. I messed everything up. I tried to help and only made things worse. The purse remained silent. He didn't even look at me properly. He doubted me. The closet door opened. Tessa lifted her head, her face stained with tears. Maggie was standing in the doorway, her expression worried. Sweetheart. She came in and sat next to Tessa on the floor, not caring about her uniform or the dust. What happened? And Tessa told her everything. The conversation she heard, the recording, the attempt to tell Derek, Camille showing up, the humiliation in the hallway, the doubt in his eyes. When she finished, she was out of breath and out of tears. Maggie remained silent for a long moment. You did the right thing, she said finally. Tessa laughed without humor. The right thing? I was humiliated in front of the CEO and the executive snake. He probably thinks I'm crazy. You tried to tell the truth. It's not your fault they didn't believe you. Maggie took her hand. Sometimes the truth takes time to be heard, dear. Doesn't mean it's not worth saying. Tessa looked at the older woman, at the kind eyes that had seen everything in that building over 20 years. What if they never believe? Then at least you'll know you tried. Maggie patted her hand. And that crazy bag of yours still has the proof, doesn't it? Tessa looked at Grace. The recorder was still there, buried at the bottom, but there. Real. Friday is the day after tomorrow, Maggie said. The board meeting, if you want to try again. I don't know if I can. I know you can. Maggie stood up and extended her hand. Come on. You need some tea and a night's sleep. Things always look better in the morning. Tessa let the older woman pull her from the floor, and as they walked down the hallway toward the elevator, she thought about Maggie's words. Sometimes the truth takes time to be heard. Maybe so, but Friday was coming, and Tessa hadn't given up yet. In the 40th floor office, Derek Hale was sitting in his chair, looking out at the city through the window. The sugar packet was still in his jacket pocket. He took it out, turned it between his fingers. "I just wanted to help," her voice echoed in his head, and he couldn't decide if she was lying or if he had just made a terrible mistake. Thursday dawned gray in New York. Tessa looked out the window of her tiny Brooklyn apartment and saw heavy clouds covering the skyline. It seemed appropriate. The city's mood matching hers. One day until the board meeting, Grace. She was sitting on the bed, the bag in her lap, talking to it like she did every morning. One day to find out if I'm brave or completely crazy. The bag remained silent. Probably both, right? Silence. You're a great listener. She reached into the bag looking for the recorder. She needed to hear it again. She needed to be sure she hadn't imagined everything. That the proof was real. She pulled out first a broken umbrella she hadn't used in 3 years. Then a celebrity magazine from 2019 with a torn cover. Then a pack of crackers she didn't even remember putting away. "Grace, we need to have a serious talk about your hoarding habits." Finally, she found the recorder. The same old device from her grandmother, with its scratched case and the play button that stuck a little. She pressed it. Camille's voice filled the silence of the room, each word a confirmation of what she already knew. The sabotage was real, the evidence was fabricated, and Derek had no idea what was coming. Tessa stopped the recording. The proof was real, small, imperfect, with poor quality, but real. The question was, how to make someone believe. At 3 in the afternoon, Maggie's phone rang. The older woman was in the lobby of Hale Ventures, organizing the week's schedules, when she saw Tessa's name on the screen. "Dear, shouldn't you be resting?" "Mag, I need to know something." Tessa's voice was tense. "Is there any meeting happening today? With the board?" Maggie frowned. "Why?" "Please, Mag, it's important." The older woman looked around, checking if anyone was listening. "There's a prep meeting at 4, on the 38th floor. Some board members, Camille and Derek." "Why? What are you planning?" "Nothing. Tessa, I promise I won't do anything crazy." "Your promises don't convince me, dear. Last time you promised not to do anything crazy, you crashed the most important meeting of the year. That was different." "How?" "The bag got stuck in the door," Maggie sighed. "Tessa, I know you want to help, but if you show up at that meeting again—" "I won't show up, I promise. I just want to know what's happening." "And how do you plan to do that?" Silence on the other end of the line. "Tessa? Maybe. Cleaning the room next door?" "Tessa? What?" "Cleaning ladies clean things. It's my job." Maggie rubbed her forehead. "You're gonna give me gray hair, girl. You already have gray hair, Mag. And you're responsible for every single one of them." On the 38th floor at 4:15, Camille Rhodes was in control. She had spent the last hour presenting a pre-report to 5 board members, a preview of what would be shown at Friday's meeting. Perfect charts, convincing data, documents that looked absolutely authentic. "As you can see," she said, pointing to the big screen, "the Asia contracts have been neglected for months. Derek's signatures are on documents he clearly never read. The meeting recordings show he was aware of the problems and chose to ignore them." The board members murmured among themselves. Worried faces, doubtful looks. Derek was sitting in the corner of the room, shoulders tense, jaw locked. Every word from Camille was a weight on his chest. It was like being back at the orphanage, 10 years old, sitting in the director's office, being accused of something he didn't do, and nobody believing him. "You're trouble, Derek. Families end up moving on for a reason." 25 years later, and he still felt like the boy who never found his place. "That's not true," he said, his voice controlled despite the chaos inside him. "I never ignored any contract. I never." "Derek." Camille interrupted him with that smile of honey over razors. "I understand it's hard to accept, but documents don't lie, recordings don't lie, the evidence is clear." "What evidence? I never said those things. Those recordings are manipulated." Camille raised an eyebrow. "Is that what you're suggesting? That someone fabricated evidence against you?" She turned to the board. Gentlemen, I know this is difficult. Derek built this company. We all respect him. But when leadership fails, it's our responsibility to act. I didn't fail, Derek said. I don't know where these documents came from, but… You don't know? Camille tilted her head. They have your signature, Derek. Your handwriting, your name on every page. Derek opened his mouth to respond, but he had no answer. Because the evidence looked real, it looked authentic, and he couldn't explain how it had come out of nowhere. The meeting ended at 5:30. The board members left in silence, avoiding Derek's gaze. Camille gathered the papers with the calm of a predator who had just cornered her prey. Derek. She stopped beside him before leaving. I'm sorry it came to this, I really am. But tomorrow, the board will vote. And when they vote… She patted his shoulder. Well, you know what's going to happen. She left. Derek remained alone in the empty room, looking at the turned-off screen. 35 years. An empire built from nothing. And now, in a matter of days, everything was crumbling. He put his hand in his pocket. The sugar packet was still there. Tessa's voice in his head. And he wondered, for the 1000th time since the night before, if he had made a terrible mistake by doubting her. In the cleaning supply closet on the 35th floor, Tessa was sitting on the floor, the recorder in her hands. She hadn't been able to listen to the meeting. She had arrived too late, found the room empty, and spent the last hour pretending to clean while trying to gather information through the hallways. What she had discovered wasn't good. Grace, she whispered, Camille presented the evidence today. Derek tried to defend himself, but nobody believed him. Tomorrow's meeting it's to finish him. The bag swayed slightly on her shoulder. Tessa looked at the recorder. The proof was there. Small, but real. She stored the device at the bottom of her bag. He didn't believe me, she murmured. When I tried to tell him, he looked at me like I was crazy. She thought about the hallway, the humiliation, the doubt in his eyes. But that doesn't mean I'm going to let him fall. She stood up. Tomorrow was Friday. Tomorrow was the day, and she was going to be ready. Even if nobody believed her, even if she had to do it alone. Because some truths need to be told, even when the whole world is deaf. At 11 at night, Tessa was leaving the building when her cell phone rang. Unknown number, she answered. Miss Bloom? The voice was familiar, but she couldn't identify it right away. Who is this? Evan Park, Mr. Hale's assistant. Tessa stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. His assistant. How did you get my number? Human resources. Look, I don't have much time. Mr. Hale doesn't know I'm calling. His voice was low, urgent. I heard what happened in the hallway yesterday, and I think you're right. Tessa's heart raced. You believe me? I've worked with Mr. Hale for 5 years. I know what he's like, and I know how Camille operates. A pause. Do you have any proof? I have a recording. It's not perfect, but… Bring it tomorrow, to the board meeting. But I can't get in there. I'll get you in. Evan's voice became firmer. Mr. Hale may not believe you now, but when he hears that recording, he'll understand. Tessa felt her eyes burn. Why are you helping me? Because Mr. Hale is the best person I've ever met, and he doesn't deserve to be destroyed by someone like Camille. A pause. And because I saw how he looks at you. Tessa blinked. How he… What? Tomorrow, 10 in the morning, be in the lobby. And he hung up. Tessa stood there on the sidewalk, phone in hand, heart beating way too fast. Grace, she whispered to the purse, I think we just got ourselves an ally. The purse swayed on her shoulder, and for the first time since that night in the hallway, Tessa felt something she had forgotten how to feel. Hope. Friday. The day that would decide everything. Tessa woke up at 5 in the morning, without needing an alarm, her whole body tense, heart already racing before she even opened her eyes. Today's the day, Grace. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at the purse hanging on the chair. Today we find out if I'm brave or just really, really clumsy. The purse stayed silent. Probably both. She got up, took a shower, and spent the next 20 minutes choosing what to wear. A janitor's uniform didn't seem right for crashing a board meeting. But she didn't exactly have an executive wardrobe either. In the end, she went with dark jeans, a clean white blouse, and the only blazer she owned. One she'd bought at a thrift store 3 years ago and never worn. I look like a janitor pretending to be professional, she said to the mirror. Which was exactly what she was. She grabbed the Grace purse, checked that the recorder was still at the bottom, buried under 3 layers of random stuff, but there, and left. The subway was packed at 7 in the morning. Tessa squeezed between a man in a suit talking on his phone and a woman with 3 shopping bags, holding Grace against her chest like it was a baby. "Easy," she whispered to the purse. "I know you don't like crowds, but we need to get there." The purse seemed to get heavier in response. "Don't be dramatic." When Tessa got to the Hale Ventures lobby, it was 8:42. The board meeting was scheduled for 10. 1 hour and 18 minutes to change everything, or to completely destroy her own life. She sat on one of the lobby couches, pretending to read something on her phone while watching the traffic. Executives coming and going, security guards in suits, receptionists answering calls. And then she saw him. Derek Hale. He came out of the elevator at 9:15, accompanied by 2 men in suits that Tessa didn't recognize. Lawyers, probably. His face was closed off, jaw tense. The look of someone who already knows he's lost the battle but is going to fight anyway. He walked through the lobby without looking around. Walked past Tessa without seeing her. And she felt her heart squeeze. "You're not alone," she whispered, too quiet for anyone to hear. "Even if you don't know it yet." At 9:53, Tessa's phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. "Emergency stairs. Side door. Go up to 40. I left it open. Evan." Tessa stood up so fast she almost dropped the purse. The side door to the emergency stairs was in a corner of the lobby, partially hidden by a giant decorative plant. Tessa looked around, nobody paying attention, and snuck over to it. The door was unlocked. She took a deep breath, grabbed Grace, and started climbing. 40 floors of stairs. 40 floors of steps, handrails, and growing regret for not going to the gym more in the past 5 years. When she reached the 30th floor, she was out of breath. When she reached the 35th, her legs were shaking. When she finally pushed through the door on the 40th floor at 10:11, she was sweaty, disheveled, and breathing like she'd run a marathon. "Grace," she panted, leaning against the hallway wall, "next time I decide to be a hero, remind me to take the elevator." The purse swayed on her shoulder as if to say, "I told you so." Evan was waiting at the end of the hallway. He made an urgent gesture for her to come closer. "You're late," he whispered. 40 floors of stairs. The meeting already started. Camille is presenting the evidence now. Tessa's heart raced, more than it already was, which was impressive. And Derek? He's in there, trying to defend himself. But, Evan shook his head. "It's not working. I need to get in. The door is locked. Only people with authorization." "Evan." Tessa stared at him. "I didn't climb 40 flights of stairs to stay outside. Get me a way in." Evan hesitated for a second, then looked at her purse. "You have the recording?" "I do." "Then come on." He led her down the hallway to a side door, a service entrance that Tessa knew well, because it was the same one she used when cleaning the floor. "This door leads to a small room behind the conference room," Evan explained. "It used to be a storage space. Nobody uses it anymore, but there's a door that connects to the main room. If you can get in without making noise." "I can do it?" Evan looked at her with a mix of hope and concern. "Are you sure?" Tessa thought about everything that had happened. The conversation on the terrace, the sugar packet, the humiliation in the hallway. Derek's eyes when he doubted her. "No," she said honestly, "but I'm going to do it anyway." She pushed the door to the small room, and that's when Grace chose the perfect moment to get stuck on the door handle. For the love of, Tessa pulled. The purse wouldn't come loose. Pulled again, harder. "Grace, not now." The strap slipped, the purse opened, and half the contents, including 3 pen caps, a pack of tissues, and a box of matches she didn't even know she had, fell to the floor with a noise that echoed through the hallway. Evan's eyes widened. "Shh." I know." Tessa crouched down to gather the things, her hands shaking. "She does this on purpose, I swear." "Quick, before someone hears." Tessa stuffed everything back into the purse, no order, no care, and slipped through the door to the small room. It was a small space, dark, full of old boxes and abandoned equipment. But in the back, as Evan had promised, there was another door. And through that door, she could hear voices. The Asia contracts were neglected. Camille. The signatures are his. The recordings are his. The responsibility is his. Tessa moved closer to the door. She put her ear to the wood, and listened. "Gentlemen of the board," Camille's voice was pure unease. "I know this is difficult. Derek Hale built this company. We all respect him. But when leadership fails, it's our responsibility to act. It's our responsibility to protect Hale Ventures." Silence. Then another voice, male, older. "And what is your recommendation, Miss Rhodes?" "A vote of no confidence, immediate removal from the CEO position, and the appointment of interim leadership until a complete investigation can be conducted." More silence, and then finally Derek. "This is a lie." His voice was controlled, but Tessa could hear the tension underneath. The effort to maintain composure while everything fell apart. "These documents aren't real. These recordings were manipulated. Someone is sabotaging me." "Someone?" Camille let out a short laugh. "Derek, the evidence has your signature, your voice, your name. Who would be sabotaging you? And more important, why?" Silence. Derek had no answer, because he didn't know who, didn't know why. He only knew he was drowning and had no one to hold his hand. Tessa closed her eyes. "Grace," she whispered, "I'm going to do something very stupid now. If it goes wrong, it's your fault." The purse remained silent. Tessa grabbed the door handle, took a deep breath, and pushed. The door opened with a sound that shouldn't have been so loud. But it was. 32 heads turned at the same time. Directors, investors, board members, 3 journalists from specialized publications who had been invited to witness the leadership transition. And in the center of it all, standing next to the screen, Camille Rhodes with her smile frozen on her face. Tessa Bloom stood in the doorway, Grace hanging from her shoulder, her thrift store blazer wrinkled, her hair still messy from climbing the stairs. She looked around, found Derek's eyes, and saw, for a fraction of a second, something she didn't expect. Hope. He disguised it quickly, straightened his shoulders, put his CEO mask back in place. But Tessa had seen it. "You're not alone," she said. The same 3 words from before. The same 3 words that had started everything. The room fell into absolute silence. Camille was the first to recover. "Security." Her voice was ice. "Call security. This woman has invaded a confidential meeting." "I didn't invade anything." Tessa took a step inside. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. "I came to bring the truth." "The truth?" Camille crossed her arms, the smile back in place, that glass-cutting smile. "And what truth could a cleaning lady bring?" Nervous laughter around the room. Some executives exchanged glances. Others shook their heads with disdain. "She's from the cleaning crew," someone whispered. "What is she doing here?" "This is ridiculous." Derek stood up. "Let her speak." The room went quiet. Camille turned to him, her eyes narrow. "Derek, you can't be serious. This woman is clearly unstable. The last time she showed up at a meeting, it was by accident. Now she's making up stories about—" I said. Derek's voice cut through hers. Firm, clear. "Let her speak." Tessa felt her eyes burn. He was giving her a chance. Even after everything. Even after the doubt. He was giving her a chance. She took a deep breath. Looked around the room. 32 faces waiting for her to say something brilliant, something that would change everything, something that would justify the ridiculous interruption she had just made. "I saw," she began, her voice shaking a little, "and I heard." Camille rolled her eyes. "Saw and heard what exactly?" "You and Preston." Tessa pointed to the corner of the room, where Preston Clark was hunched in his chair, sweating so much that his shirt collar was soaked. "Tuesday night, 39th floor. You were in the operations room." Preston went pale. Camille didn't flinch. "I was working late. It's what responsible people do." "You were planning to destroy Derek." Tessa took another step forward. "You and Preston. Fake documents. Edited recordings. A whole plan to make it look like he was incompetent." The room erupted in whispers. "That's ridiculous," Camille said, but for the first time there was a note of tension in her voice. "She's lying. She's making this up." "I have proof." Silence. Camille froze. Tessa reached into her purse, and then the disaster began. First came out a hairbrush. Tessa threw it on the floor, then a bag of mint candies, also on the floor, then a camping flashlight, then a USB cable she didn't even remember having, then an old wallet. The room started to laugh. Nervous laughter at first, then more open. The executives exchanging "this is a joke" looks, the journalists scribbling furiously. And Camille was laughing along, the smile back in place, sharper than ever. "That's your proof?" She gestured to the pile of stuff on the floor. "A purse full of junk?" Tessa kept searching, her hands sweating, her face burning. The horrible certainty that she was making a fool of herself in front of 32 people. Where was the recorder? She was sure it was there. She had checked before leaving home. She had put it at the bottom of the purse in the safest corner. But the purse seemed to have swallowed it. Miss. The board chairman, a man with white hair and a stern expression, stood up. I think we've wasted enough time with— Wait. Tessa reached deeper into the purse. She felt fabric, papers, random objects, and then, finally, the hard, scratched case of the recorder. She pulled it out and held the device up in the air like it was a trophy. This. The room fell silent. Camille looked at the recorder, at the old, scratched case, clearly ancient, and laughed. An old recorder? This is ridiculous. Derek, are you going to let this circus continue? But Derek wasn't looking at Camille. He was looking at Tessa. At her eyes, at the determination, at the absolute certainty that she was telling the truth. Let her play it, he said. Derek? I said, let her play it. The meeting's audio technician, the young man who was operating the screen system, looked from Derek to Camille, clearly confused about who to obey. Connect it, Derek ordered. The technician got up and walked over to Tessa. She handed over the recorder with trembling hands. The technician examined the device, frowned. This is old. I don't know if I can connect it to the system. Try, Derek said. The technician went back to the control table. Tried one cable. It didn't work. Tried another. That didn't work either. The minutes dragged on. The room started getting impatient. And Camille started smiling again. That smile of someone who knows they're going to win. Well, it looks like the proof doesn't work. She turned to the board. Gentlemen, I suggest we end this interruption and get back to important matters. The vote? I could be wrong. All heads turned to Tessa. She was shaking, her face red, her eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. I could be wrong, she repeated. I know how this looks. A janitor crashing a meeting, pulling random things out of a purse, talking about conspiracies. I know it sounds crazy. She looked at Derek. But I know what I heard, and I'd rather look foolish trying than stay quiet knowing. The silence that followed was different from the others. It wasn't disdain, it wasn't impatience. It was something more. The board chairman raised his hand. Wait, his voice cut through the silence. Let her speak. The entire room turned to him. Mr. Chairman, Camille began. I said, let her speak. The old man sat back in his chair, his eyes fixed on Tessa. Miss Bloom, isn't it? You said you heard a conversation. Tell us exactly what you heard. Tessa took a deep breath and began to tell everything. The conversation on the 39th floor. The voices of Camille and Preston. The forged documents. The fabricated audio recordings. The entire plan, piece by piece, word by word. When she finished, the room was silent. Camille had stopped smiling. Preston was visibly shaking. And the board chairman was looking from one to the other with an expression that Tessa couldn't figure out. This is a serious accusation, he finally said. I know. Tessa held her bag tighter. And I know I don't have proof beyond my word. But, Mr. Chairman, the audio technician stood up. I got it. The entire room turned. The recorder. The technician held up the device. I managed to connect it. The recording is ready to play. Camille turned pale, and Tessa smiled. For the first time since she had entered that room, she smiled. Play it, the chairman ordered. The technician pressed the button, and Camille's voice echoed throughout the entire room. Camille's voice echoed through the sound system. Preston, are the documents ready? The entire room held its breath. In the corner, Preston Clark looked like he was about to faint. Sweat was running down his face as if he were in the middle of a sauna. His hands were shaking so much that he had trouble keeping them in his lap. The recording continued. Preston's voice, shaky and nervous. Yes, Derek won't be able to defend himself. And then Camille again, clear as crystal. And the audio recordings, edited, they look real. Silence. A silence so complete that you could hear the hum of the air conditioning in the ceiling. Tessa didn't move, didn't breathe. She just stood there in the middle of the room, surrounded by 32 people who now looked at her in a completely different way. No longer with contempt, with recognition. Camille was the first to break. This. Her voice trembled. The first time Tessa had seen her lose her composure. This was manipulated, edited, someone forged. The same defense you used against Derek, Tessa said. Funny how it works when it's against you, right? Camille turned toward her. Her eyes, those calculating eyes that had planned every step of this conspiracy, now burned with fury. You. She took a step toward Tessa. You're a janitor, a nobody. Who do you think you are to come here? And I'm the person who saw the truth. Tessa didn't back down. And who had the courage to tell it? Courage? Camille laughed, a harsh, desperate sound. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I can fire you. I can make sure you never get a job anywhere again. I can. Mrs. Rhodes. The board chairman's voice cut like a blade. I suggest you stop talking. Camille turned toward him. The man was standing now, his face a mask of controlled fury that Tessa suspected he had perfected over decades. The recording is clear, he said. You and Mr. Clark confessed to manipulating documents and fabricating evidence against this company's CEO. In front of the board. In front of journalists. He gestured toward the 3 reporters who were writing furiously. In front of witnesses. Camille opened her mouth to respond, closed it. For the first time she had no words. I propose. The chairman looked around the table. That the vote of no confidence against Derek Hale be cancelled, and that Mrs. Rhodes be suspended immediately pending a complete investigation. Seconded, said a gray-haired woman from the other side of the table. Seconded, said another man. Seconded. Seconded. One by one, the board members agreed. One by one, they turned their backs on Camille Rhodes, and she stood there, alone. In the middle of the room, where she thought she was going to take control of everything. You, she turned to Preston. Preston, say something. Defend us. Explain that. I only did what she told me to. Preston's voice came out as a scream. The words stumbling over each other as he stood up, his eyes wide, his face stained with sweat. She forced me. Said she would hurt me if I didn't. I didn't want to, I swear. I didn't. Preston, shut up. I have proof. I have emails, messages, everything. She planned it all by herself. I just... Shut up. But Preston didn't shut up. Preston, who had spent months following orders, who had fabricated evidence and edited audio recordings and lied to protect Camille, finally spoke. And when he spoke completely. She has a folder on her computer called Removal Project. He pointed at Camille. It has all the original documents. It has the audio recordings before editing. It has everything. The room exploded. Executives talking at the same time. Journalists calling editors, board members calling for order. And in the middle of it all, Camille Rhodes being escorted out by 2 security guards who had appeared at some point during the chaos. She passed by Tessa on the way out. Stopped. With a look so sharp that Tessa felt it on her skin. You're going to regret this, Camille whispered. You don't know what you've started. Tessa held her gaze. I know exactly what I did. I told the truth. Camille opened her mouth to respond. The security guards pulled her away, and she disappeared through the door. The room slowly emptied out. Board members leaving in groups, talking quietly. Reporters rushing to publish the story. Executives trying to process what they had just witnessed. Tessa stood in the same spot, still holding Grace's bag, still surrounded by the random objects she had pulled out in her desperate search for the recorder. She bent down to gather her things, and that's when she felt it. A presence beside her. Derek Hale was there, crouched down, helping to collect the items scattered across the floor. You don't have to, Tessa started. I know. He picked up the camping flashlight and handed it to her. But I want to. They stayed quiet for a moment, collecting things, filling the bag, as if it were the most normal thing in the world for a billionaire to help a janitor clean up a mess. When they finished, Derek stood up. He extended his hand to help her. Tessa accepted. His fingers were warm against hers, firm, real. Why? His voice came out hoarse, broken, as if the words took enormous effort. Why did you do that? Tessa looked at him, at the tired eyes that finally had a spark of something beyond loneliness, at the shoulders that seemed a little lighter, at the man who had built an entire empire and still ate alone every night. Because you didn't deserve to eat dinner alone for the rest of your life. Derek stayed quiet. His eyes brightened with something that could be tears, or it could just be the light in the room. Tessa wasn't sure. You risked everything, he said. Your job, your reputation, everything, for me. For you, for the truth, for, she stopped, smiled. For Grace, too, she insisted. Derek looked at the bag that recorded the confession. She had an old recorder inside, from my grandmother. I didn't even know it still worked. But, Tessa shrugged. Grace has a life of her own. I've given up trying to understand. For the first time since she'd known him, Derek laughed. Not an almost smile, not a contained puff of air. A real laugh. The sound filled the empty room, filled Tessa's chest, filled some space inside her that she didn't even know was empty. You are. Derek shook his head. You're the most extraordinary person I've ever met. Tessa felt her face burn. I'm just a janitor. You're so much more than that. He took a step forward. Now they were close. Too close. You're the person who saw me when everyone else only saw the position, who told the truth when everyone else only wanted to say what I wanted to hear, who walked into a room full of executives with a magic bag and saved. He stopped, swallowed hard. Saved me. Derek, it was the first time she'd used his first name. I didn't do anything special. You did everything. He held her hand, the same hand he had held to help her stand up, but now it was different. Now he wasn't just helping, he was holding, as if he didn't want to let go. Thank you, he said. I don't know how to thank you. I don't know how to… You don't need to thank me. Tessa squeezed his hand back. Just don't eat dinner alone anymore, okay? It's depressing. Derek laughed again. And this time when he smiled, the smile stayed. The room was empty now, just the two of them. And Grace's bag, and the echoes of a victory neither of them expected. Miss Bloom, Derek said, his voice soft now, almost shy. Would you be interested in having dinner with me today, not alone? Tessa blinked. Dinner? At a real restaurant, with tables, chairs, other people. He smiled. I've heard places like that exist. Tessa felt her heart race. She looked at the bag. What do you think, Grace? The bag, as always, didn't respond. She said yes, Tessa decided. Derek laughed. Then it's a date. And for the first time in a long time, Tessa Bloom didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, completely, absolutely seen. The following hours passed in a blur. Tessa stayed in a corner of the room while lawyers came and went. Board members made urgent phone calls, and Derek gave statements to what seemed like an army of important people. She should have left. Gone back to the storage room. To the blue uniform. To the normal life she had before deciding that janitors could also be heroes. But every time she made a move to leave, Derek looked at her. A quick look, almost unnoticeable. As if he were checking to see if she was still there. As if he needed to know she hadn't gone away. So she stayed. At 3 in the afternoon, the board chairman made an official announcement. Camille Rhodes was formally suspended. An internal investigation would be conducted. The fabricated documents and audio recordings were being analyzed by the legal department. Derek Hale remained as CEO of Hale Ventures. The no-confidence vote was canceled. When the news spread throughout the building, Tessa could feel the change in energy. Employees who had spent weeks walking with their heads down were now smiling in the hallways. Conversations that used to be whispers were now open, relieved. Maggie appeared on the 40th floor at 4 in the afternoon, completely out of uniform, dressed in her best Sunday coat. Tessa Marie Bloom. She crossed the room like a hurricane and hugged Tessa so hard she nearly knocked the wind out of her. You did it. You really did it. Mag, I can't breathe. I don't care. You're a hero. Maggie pulled back, holding Tessa's shoulders. Everyone's talking. The janitor who saved the CEO, you're a legend. I didn't save anyone. You did save him. And I'm so proud of you I could burst. Maggie wiped away a tear. Your grandmother would be so proud. Tessa felt her chest tighten. You think so? I know so. Maggie patted her face. Now go on. Your billionaire is waiting for you. He's not but Maggie was already walking away, waving over her shoulder with a smile that clearly said she knew things Tessa hadn't even admitted to herself yet. Derek's office was different when Tessa walked in. Not physically. It still had the same huge desk, the same view of New York, the same feeling of contained power in every square inch. But there was something in the air. A lightness that hadn't been there before. And Derek was sitting not behind the desk, but on the couch by the window. No jacket. Tie loosened, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. You came, he said when she entered. You asked. I asked you to have dinner with me, not to come here. Well, Tessa looked around. I don't know where the restaurant is, and you're the only one who knows how to drive in this relationship. Derek raised an eyebrow. Relationship? Tessa felt her face burn. That's not what I mean professional relationship of acquaintances who have dinner together, professionally. Professionally. Right. On a date. Which you called a date, not me. Derek laughed. That new laugh Tessa was still getting used to hearing. You're impossible. I prefer charmingly complicated. He stood up and walked over to her. Up close, Tessa could see the dark circles still marked under his eyes, his shoulders still a bit tense, but there was something different in his eyes. Something that looked like hope. I spent the entire afternoon thinking about what to say to you, he said. And what did you decide? Nothing. All words seemed too small. He stopped in front of her. You changed everything, Tessa. Not just today. Since that first night when you knocked on my office window and told me it was sad to eat dinner alone. I said it was depressing, actually. Same thing. Not exactly. Depressing is stronger. More. Tessa. She stopped talking. Derek was looking at her in a way that made her heart beat in places that shouldn't have hearts. You saved me, he said. Not just today. You saved me from myself. From the loneliness I thought was my destiny. From the certainty that no one would ever see me beyond the position. He took her hand. You saw me. From the first day. Derek. And I was a complete fool when I doubted you. His voice trembled. When Camille showed up in the hallway and I didn't defend you, when I let her humiliate you without saying anything, Hey. Tessa squeezed his hand. You had reasons to doubt. I was just a janitor telling a crazy story about conspiracies. Anyone would have doubted. But I shouldn't have been just anyone. Not with you. He let out a breath. You're the only one who never wanted anything from me, except to see me, and I almost let that slip away because of fear. Tessa was quiet for a moment, then she smiled. You know what my grandmother used to say about mistakes? What? That mistakes are just detours on the road. What matters is whether you get back on the right path or stay stuck in the middle of nowhere complaining. Derek blinked. Your grandmother had a way with words. She had a way with everything. Tessa looked at his hand holding hers. You got back on the road. You let me speak at the meeting. You trusted me when no one else would have trusted me. That's what matters. Still, Derek. She used her free hand to turn his face toward her. Stop blaming yourself. You've spent your whole life thinking you'd be abandoned, that everyone wanted something from you. It's normal to have doubts. What matters is what you do with them. He looked into her eyes, and Tessa really saw for the first time, the boy who had grown up in orphanages, the kid nobody wanted, the man who had built an entire empire trying to prove he deserved to exist. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Okay? Derek didn't answer with words. He answered by leaning forward and kissing her. It was a gentle kiss, careful, as if he was afraid she might disappear if he pressed too hard. His lips were warm against hers, and he tasted like coffee and something else she couldn't identify. Hope, maybe. Future. When they pulled apart, Tessa was breathless. She blinked. That was much better than I imagined. Derek smiled. You imagined it? Shut up. He laughed and pulled her in for another kiss. This one was less careful, more urgent, as if he had been holding back for weeks and could finally let go. When they separated again, they were both breathing hard. Dinner, Tessa said. Are we still having dinner? We can order something here, if you want. In your office? It has a nice view. Tessa looked out the window. New York sparkled at their feet, a carpet of lights that seemed to stretch to infinity. Yeah, she agreed. It has a nice view. They ordered Thai food. They ate on the couch, with their feet up on the coffee table, talking about everything and nothing. About her childhood in Brooklyn, about his orphanages, about dreams of opening a cafe and fears of trusting people. And at some point, between one laugh and another, Grace the purse fell off the couch and spilled half its contents on the carpet of the CEO's office at Hale Ventures. Derek looked at the pile of random things, staplers, old magazines, mint candies, a porcelain cat figurine, and started laughing. Your purse is a public hazard. She's a force of nature. Tessa bent down to gather the things, but she has a good heart. Derek bent down to help, and while they both collected the wreckage from the magic purse, Tessa thought about how strange life was, how a cleaning lady and a billionaire had ended up sitting on the floor of a luxury office, laughing about pink staplers and mint candies. Derek, she said. Huh? Thank you. He looked up. For what? For trusting me. In the end. he smiled. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it." Tessa smiled back. And for the first time in a long time, she knew, with a certainty that went to her bones, that she had found the place where she belonged. Not on the 40th floor of a corporate building, not next to a billionaire, but next to this specific person. This man who used to eat dinner alone until an inconvenient cleaning lady decided that was unacceptable. "Hey, Derek." "Huh? Do you still have the sugar packet?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled, worn packet, clearly kept there for days. "I said it was a lucky charm," Tessa whispered. "You were right." Derek put the packet back. "About a lot of things." And when he kissed her again, Tessa thought that maybe, just maybe, her grandmother was watching from somewhere, shaking her head and saying, "I knew that purse would bring good luck." 3 months later, Hale Ventures had changed. It wasn't just Camille Rhodes' name erased from every plaque and every document. It wasn't just Preston Clark testifying against her in exchange for a deal that would probably keep him out of jail. It was something deeper, something you felt in the air as soon as you walked past the turnstiles in the lobby. People smiled. Derek Hale, the CEO who used to walk through the halls like a ghost in an expensive suit, now stopped to chat. He knew names. He asked about families, about weekends, about vacation plans, and most importantly, he no longer ate dinner alone. Tessa Bloom watched all of this happen from an unexpected place. The chair of Employee Wellness Coordinator, a position Derek had invented especially for her the week after Camille's downfall. "You can't give me a job just because we're dating," she had protested. "I'm not giving it to you. You deserve it. You know this building better than any executive. You know what the employees need because you were one of them." Derek? And besides, he had added with that almost smile that now appeared much more frequently, "If you don't accept, Maggie will give me a hard time." Tessa accepted, and in the following 3 months she transformed Hale Ventures from the inside out. Break rooms that actually worked, flexible schedules for parents, a mentorship program for entry-level employees, and her favorite project, a cafe in the building lobby where anyone, from janitor to director, could get free coffee and chat. "Nobody should eat alone," she had said to Derek when she presented the idea. He had looked at her with that expression that still made her blush, as if she were the most extraordinary thing he had ever seen. "Nobody should," he agreed. Now, on a Friday afternoon, Tessa was in the office finishing reports when the door opened. Derek walked in with a strange expression. Nervous, almost shy. "Hey," she frowned. "Are you okay?" "I am. He put his hands in his pockets. "Can you come with me? There's something I want to show you." "Now?" "Now." Tessa looked at the reports, then at him. "Is this about work?" "Not exactly. So do I need to bring Grace?" Derek smiled. "Definitely." They went up to the rooftop, the same rooftop where everything had started to change, where she had told him about the cafe dream, where he had kept the sugar packet in his pocket for the first time. But today the rooftop was different. There were lights, small bulbs hanging from the railings, forming a path to the center of the space. And in the center, a table set for two, with candles and flowers and a view of all of New York shining in the background. Tessa stopped. "Derek, what is this?" He didn't answer. He just guided her to the table, pulled out the chair for her, and sat across from her. 3 months ago, he began, his voice a little rough, "a cleaning lady with a magic bag invaded my life and changed everything. She told me I wasn't alone. She gave me a sugar packet as a charm. She risked everything to save me from a conspiracy I didn't even know existed." Tessa felt her eyes burn. "Derek? Wait, let me finish." He took a deep breath. "I spent my whole life thinking I was going to be alone, that nobody would want me for who I was, just for what I had. That love was something that happened to other people, not me." He looked into her eyes. "And then you showed up, with your walking disasters and your conversations with bags and your truths that hurt because they were so right." Tessa gave a wet laugh. "Was that a compliment?" "It was the best I have." He took something from his pocket, a small box. "Tessa Marie Bloom, you taught me that nobody needs to eat dinner alone. You showed me that trusting isn't weakness. You made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I deserve to be loved." He opened the box, but there wasn't a ring inside. There was a key. Tessa blinked. Key? Derek smiled. "The commercial space on the corner of 5th Avenue and 42nd. It just became available. It has room for a cafe with 20 tables, a full kitchen, and a view of Central Park." Tessa felt the air leave her lungs. You bought a space for me to open a cafe? I invested in your dream. The rest is up to you." "Derek, this is—" She took the key with trembling hands. "This is too much. I can't accept." "You can, and you will." He held her hands. "You spent your whole life dreaming about a place where nobody ate alone. Now you can build it." Tessa looked at the key, at the lights, at Derek, at everything that had happened since that first night when she knocked on his office window. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you accept." "I accept, of course I accept, but—" She looked at the box. "Wasn't this supposed to have a ring?" Derek laughed. "I thought I'd do it differently. First the dream, then, wait." Tessa raised her hand. "I need to put the key away." She opened Grace her bag, and then it began. First came out an old wallet, then a glittery hair tie, then a bottle cap that she had no idea how it got there, then a pack of tissues, then a box of matches. "Grace, for the love of—" And then she saw it. At the bottom of the bag, along with the usual chaos, there was something that shouldn't be there. A velvet box, small, square, exactly the size of a ring. Tessa froze. She looked at Derek. She looked at the bag. She looked at Derek again. "You," her voice failed. "You put this in here?" Derek had the most innocent expression in the world. "I didn't put anything in there." "Derek," the bag decided. Tessa opened the little box with trembling hands. It was a ring. Simple, elegant, a small diamond surrounded by smaller stones that sparkled like stars. "I don't know how that got in there," Derek said, but his smile gave him away completely. "But since it's there—" He stood up, walked around the table, and knelt in front of her. "Tessa Marie Bloom, the cleaning lady who saw too much, the woman who saved me, the most extraordinary person I've ever known." He took her hand. "You taught me that nobody needs to eat dinner alone. Will you agree to have all your meals with me for the rest of your life?" Tessa felt the tears fall. She looked at the ring, at Derek, at Grace, the bag that had somehow been part of everything. "Grace," she said, her voice choked up, "did you meddle in my love life?" The purse, as always, didn't answer. But from somewhere behind one of the tables, Evan Park appeared with a camera, smiling like he had just won the lottery. "I might have helped," he admitted. "Evan?" "What?" "The purse needed an accomplice." Tessa laughed. She cried. Both at the same time. And then she looked at Derek, still kneeling, still waiting, still with that look of someone who couldn't believe his own luck. "Yes," she said. "Yes, yes, you dramatic billionaire. Yes, I accept. Yes, I'll share every meal with you. Yes, yes, yes." Derek put the ring on her finger, and when he stood up and kissed her, the entire terrace in applause. Because somehow, Tessa didn't know how, the place had filled with people. Maggie, crying and clapping. Hale Ventures employees she had helped over the past 3 months. The board chairman who had become an unlikely fan of hers. And dozens of other people who had come to witness the moment. "You planned this," Tessa said against Derek's lips. "I might have planned it." "You're terrible. You love me." "Fortunately." He laughed and spun her in his arms, the terrace lights shining around them, all of New York as their witness. When they finally stopped, Tessa rested her head on his chest and looked out at the city. "My grandmother was right," she murmured. "About what?" "A heavy purse is a sign of a full life." She looked at Grace, sitting on a nearby chair, looking as worn and magical as always. "And mine has never been so full." Derek tightened his arms around her. "Mine too," he said. "Mine too." And while the stars appeared over New York and the guests toasted the most unlikely couple Hale Ventures had ever seen, Tessa Bloom closed her eyes and smiled. She had started as a cleaning lady, invisible, ordinary, one among thousands. And now she was there, engaged to a billionaire, owner of a coffee shop under construction, surrounded by people who cared. All because one night, she had knocked on glass and told the truth to a man who needed to hear it. "You're not alone." And he never was again. What did you think of Grace the purse? Do you also think she has a life of her own? Leave your opinion in the comments. On a scale of 0 to 10, what score would you give this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to receive more touching stories like this one. See you next time.